Your business may be small, but you've got big goals. Brother Laser Printers can help you succeed, no matter the space, task, or budget. From crisp black and white to vivid full color, our printers offer affordable quality you can trust. Plus, fast printing and high page yields make them ideal for home offices and shared workspaces. It's no wonder Brother is the #1 retail brand in laser printer unit sales in the U.S. With Brother at your side, go from small to do it all. Shop now at brother-usa.com/laser.
Johnsonville sausage strips are strips of sausage that look and cook like bacon. They come in amazing flavors like original, maple, or chorizo. Now, you can transform your BLT into an SLT or turn your bacon cheeseburger into a chorizo cheeseburger. It's not bacon. It's Johnsonville sausage strips, and it's a meaty miracle. Find it by the bacon, even though it's sausage.
Welcome to the Boneyard with Steve Robertson. As always, I am your good friend and host, Steve Robertson, here on the Hump Day edition of The Yard. Hope you are well today, no matter where you are, no matter what you're up to, no matter what's going on in your life. Whatever it is, this too shall pass. All things good and bad do pass. And a lot to talk about, even though we hadn't had much action here on the field or the courts the last couple of days. As you guys know, we're I don't know if we'd say satisfied with men's basketball, but I think we ended on a positive note for the most part, and I think a lot of people are kind of looking forward to what happens with recruiting. A lot of discussions about potential transfers. DJ Jeffries from Memphis, a guy that Mississippi State was very much involved with, chose Memphis. A lot of discussion that he may enter the transfer portal here in the next few days. We've had an update over on Gene's page. We'll have more here in the coming days. As of today, I believe that he is leaning towards entering the NCAA transfer portal. I'm told he really wants to play the 3, and that he is going to meet with Penny Hardaway on Thursday and just kind of discuss the lay of the land. You're going to have kind of exit interviews. Memphis, of course, wins the NIT. DJ Jeffries had a nice ball game. Good friends with Cam Matthews at Mississippi State. And so those are some things that we're kind of looking for. And got Garrison Brooks. You may recall Garrison Brooks signed with Mississippi State. State lets him out of his letter of intent at the wishes of his mother, and he enrolls at North Carolina. Now he is able to kind of get out and move around, make his own decision. And Mississippi State appears to be an option if he elects to enter the transfer portal. There are a lot of players in the transfer portal right now, and there are a lot of women's basketball players in the portal. We'll get to that a little bit later. Some of those from Mississippi State. But, there's some good things that are going on, and that's the thing. When you look at the young nucleus we have returning, if you can add some front court help, it certainly helps Mississippi State's probability or possibility of making the NCAA tournament next year. So Ben Howland needs some things to go right with the transfer portal. And Mississippi State did have Keandre Montgomery enter the transfer portal. Might not be the last one to go. That has become a big thing these days, especially in basketball. Everybody comes in expecting to be, a one and done or an immediate contributor. It just doesn't work out that way. Mississippi State also was set to play a baseball game against Mississippi Valley State on Tuesday. That game canceled due to rain in the area, and there was some rain. Probably could have got the game in if we absolutely had to. I think it was probably the right decision. And I don't know if you guys know this, but the Mississippi Valley State baseball program, one of the worst Division I baseball programs in the country. And so you play those guys, and it becomes an RPI killer. There have been 290 teams play a Division I baseball game this year. Ordinarily, there are more than that, but of course, the Ivy League and some other schools elected to opt out this year for one reason or another. But of those 290 teams, Mississippi Valley State's RPI is 287. They have an 0-9 record. And I want to kind of put this in perspective for you, okay? We talk about, nothing to gain by playing these guys. So, of those 9 losses, let me run these down for you because I want to make sure that you kind of fully appreciate. We probably got more work in actually having batting practice today rather than playing against Mississippi Valley State. All due respect to the Delta Devils, but they opened up the season with a doubleheader against Southeastern Louisiana down in Hammond. They lose game 1, 26-0. Game 2, 23-0. Then lose Game 3, 17-0. They open up SWAC play against Alcorn State, play a 3-game series against the Braves there. They get beat 16-3, 9-1, and 14-1. So 5 runs scored. They postponed the Alabama A&M series. That was supposed to be played in Itabena. This past couple weekends ago, they played Alabama State. They get beat 10-1, 14-0, and 8-2. So you can kind of do the math there. What's that, 8 runs on the entire season? So Mississippi State's RPI, according to Warren Nolan RPI, and that's not official, but Warren Nolan's RPI has Mississippi State at 28. So you beat Mississippi Valley State, and even though you get a win, you would drop in the RPI because, quite frankly, you're playing a team that you should beat handily, and then outside of just getting some guys on the field and giving them some work, there's just really no benefit in it. I mean, sure, it'd been great to get Parker Stinnett some work, and that's the thing about relievers. Relievers need to get out there and throw. And over the weekend, we had some guys that didn't throw. So it would have been good to kind of get some work against them. But I think in the long term, when you begin to think about hosting an NCAA regional and potentially playing for a top 8 national seed, playing a team with an RPI near 300 doesn't aid in that pursuit. So we're not going to play them. And we are going to be ready to play Kentucky on Thursday. We're going to preview that later in the show. So we won't be without baseball for very long. And some would say, well, Steve, why Thursday? Well, everybody's playing Thursday, Friday, Saturday because of Easter. So we'll go ahead and get that knocked out. Kentucky pretty hot right now, too, coming in. So we'll preview those guys, and because that series will start Thursday. And then, of course, we'll get together on Friday, recap the Thursday game, and kind of look ahead to Friday and Saturday. I do expect State to win the series. But, one of the things that I thought about as I was preparing for the show, it's been a busy day for me, and I'll be honest with you, I ended up going back to sleep this evening. Didn't mean to. It just kind of happens. And got a little sick over the weekend and didn't get a lot of rest. Went to bed late on Monday night, woke up early Tuesday morning, and it finally kind of catches up with you. I guess I'm an old guy now, and so maybe I'll start taking naps. I'm about that life. I'll be honest with you. If I'm capable of taking an afternoon nap, I probably will, if that's the plan going forward. But I actually slept through the Mississippi State football media opportunity today. Just wasn't expected. But you can't argue with the body. When it's time to rest, it's time to rest. And so we'll have some football content up, and we'll get caught up on all that stuff here. Paul Jones, of course, Mike Nemeth kind of sat in for us, got some good information. We'll get all that out to you here in the coming days. But one of the things about this Valley thing that kind of got me thinking again, and we'll spend a little time talking about this. It's time for divisions in college baseball. Everybody doesn't need to be Division I in college baseball. A lot of people want to be Division I. They're like, oh, we want to go to Omaha. We want to have a chance to go to a regional. There are some schools out there like Mississippi State, Ole Miss, Florida State, many others that are very committed to college baseball. And so they invest in college baseball. But what's happened now, and I know there's all the Power 5, that sort of stuff. But when you've got teams out here like Valley that are not committed to baseball, and I guess a few years ago, they had Coach Doug Shows up there, and they really worked hard to kind of change the culture there and kind of install some winning baseball up there. And they did improve as a program. But why should Mississippi State and Mississippi Valley be in the same league? And what I mean by that is it's got nothing to do with the quality of play. It's really got nothing to do with, with anything other than resources. So Mississippi State, Mississippi Valley play in the same league, but they're not in the same league. And so when you begin to kind of break this thing down, it's just like we've got FCS football, right? So you've got Division I and Division I AA, and of course we change the labels every so often. It's because I guess we don't want anybody's feelings to get hurt, so we have the FBS and the FCS. Well, why don't we have that in college baseball? It's a little different in basketball. It doesn't require the same resources in basketball that it does in baseball. But it does. There is a distinct difference between those schools, and here's the deal. You got a smaller roster in basketball, and so you put together a senior-laden team, you could make a run. I mean, even if you're a team, like Mississippi Valley State. I mean, they're a team that has played in the tournament. I think that's right. But my point being is that the chances of Mississippi Valley State or even Alcorn having an opportunity to go win an NCAA regional is very, very slim. So why not put together another division that allows them to compete against schools that are similarly situated so they actually have something to play for? I worked with a guy several years ago by the name of Juan Guy. He was an all-state player in 3 sports out of Bogalusa, Louisiana. He played college baseball at Southern for Roger Cador, and Roger, a tremendous baseball coach. I mean, when he was there at Southern, they won the SWAC regularly. And actually, Juan Guy was on that Southern Jaguar team that beat Cal State Fullerton in a regional, a 1-4 deal. Now, they didn't advance beyond that, but that's the highlight of their program. That is the biggest moment in their program, was upsetting Cal State Fullerton. You may recall in 2014, Southern was in our region and we played at Lafayette, and Southern upset ULL in the first game, which kind of allowed us to say, hey, we've got a chance to kind of lock this thing down here and get ahead, and we did, and we couldn't finish the deal, which would have led to a super regional in Oxford, which has been pretty cool. But when you begin to think that's the ceiling for those programs, why do we continue to have them bang their heads against the wall? Why not give them something more to play for? And at the same time, kind of free up, the schools like Mississippi State and Ole Miss and others, allow us to fully fund baseball. Set up new divisions, give us an opportunity. This needs to happen. This is what's good for the college game. I am a big proponent of advancing the college game. And so when there are schools out there that basically the best they can ever hope for is to win their conference tournament, then there needs to be something changed. And I'm not one of these folks that believes everybody deserves a participation trophy. But those schools are holding the rest of us back. And so let's enact some meaningful legislation in college baseball to create a division. I don't know why it's so difficult. We do it in football. Why can't we do it in baseball? Makes perfect sense to me. If they don't want to fund baseball, if they don't want to pay the volunteer assistant coach, Kyle Cheeseborough's been with us for a few years now, and now you can't even have camps to help supplement that guy's salary, because that's usually who runs the baseball camps for you, is your volunteer assistant coach. So now you don't have that opportunity. And just think about how many of those guys, too, that have a dream of being a college baseball coach, and the only way they can kind of get their foot in the door is to be the volunteer coach, and then we can't pay them. If we could pay them, we could retain a lot more of these guys in the college game. We wouldn't lose them to the minor leagues. We wouldn't lose them to major league teams. We'd be able to kind of keep them here in college. And there are some people that are just, tuned for college recruiting and that sort of stuff. And so we can't find the third assistant because, places like, in the MAC, they don't, why would they want to do anything that gives us a bigger advantage? And that was some of the big discussion last year in the offseason. And I give Kendall Rogers of D1 Baseball a lot of credit for kind of championing the cause. Is there was some legislation that was proposed. Greg Sankey was involved in some of that, to give schools the ability to pay the third assistant coach. Now, you were not required to do it, but it would give you the ability to pay the coach if you had the money to do so. Well, those folks out there in the MAC and the Mountain West, well, they don't want to do anything that gives, the Power 5 schools more of an advantage. Nobody's out there, nobody feels sorry for the New York Yankees. You know what I'm saying? It's like when you've got teams out there that are winning and people see this great cathedral that we've built here at Duty Noble Field, and you're like, so you want us to be able to let those guys spend more money? And so in many respects, those smaller conferences that are not fully committed to baseball are holding the rest of the game back. And so it just makes perfect sense to me. Let's give them a league in which they can compete, and then also give the Power 5 schools and anybody else that's really committed. I mean, you look at places like Cal State Fullerton. Well, they don't play Division I football. They're committed out there in the Big West to playing college baseball. And so if they're fully committed to it, then they ought to be able to play against the schools that are. It just makes perfect sense to me. I don't know why we do it. I mean, it's like I understand why we play Mississippi Valley State, but really, why is that even an option? I mean, years ago, we used to play William Carey. Years ago, we played Delta State, and now you can't play them. And so it's like, let's let's do some things that make sense. And there's a lot about college baseball that doesn't make any sense because let's be honest about this too, okay? Most of the kids that are playing college baseball, they're middle-class kids. That's just the reality of it. And so nobody's really worried about that. It's like, oh, well, these guys aren't being exploited. I mean, look at the privilege they've had in life. And so nobody's out there kind of pushing for that. Most of these guys play travel team baseball, and they're pretty well financed throughout their baseball careers. And so it's not the issue that it is in some other sports. I contend to you, and I've shared this before on the show and many others, college baseball players shouldn't have to pay to play just because they excel at a sport outside of football or basketball. Women's basketball loses a fortune for everybody. Even UConn is in the red when it comes to women's basketball. Yet those scholarships are fully funded. Now, I'm not saying we take that away. I'm just saying let's level the playing field a little bit. Let's give college baseball the opportunity to extend full scholarships. You can say, well, Steve, where's the money going to come from? Well, yeah, there's a lot of money out there, but some schools can kind of pick and choose. And I don't know, maybe if you don't just say, okay, listen, we're going to give you some discretion here, Mr. Athletic Director, and say, listen, if you want to have a rifle team and you want to fully fund that, then you go do that. You know what? We don't even have a rifle team at Mississippi State. If you want to go fund the bats team, and you can do that. If there are sports out there that are kind of niche sports for your area, then you should have the ability to go do that. We are a baseball-crazy state, and we have been very blessed the last couple of decades. Southern Miss, Mississippi State, and Ole Miss have all been very good in baseball. Delta State's won national championships in baseball. We understand what it takes to compete in college baseball. We've had some junior college programs, I guess Hines and a couple others, that have gone and played for a national championship in JUCO baseball. And so it makes sense that, we want to go fund baseball. Well, we don't have a hockey team here. But you know what? There are a lot of schools up in the north that do. And so you can say, you know what? Hey, you guys don't want to fully fund baseball, but you want to fully fund hockey. We're going to give you the ability to do that because that's what matters at your school. That's a sport of importance. That's a sport that moves the needle. So let's do what we can to ensure that those student athletes get a better experience. What's wrong with that? To me, that makes perfect sense. There's just so much about this that it's just wrong. And nobody seems to care. Of course, everybody in college baseball cares, but there's not enough people out there around the country that are invested in college baseball. And I've said many times that when Michigan went and played for a national championship, it's one of the best things that happened to college baseball. Now, we wanted to go play too. But in order for us to kind of get some things working and to get some meaningful legislation passed, we need the Big Ten to care about baseball. And so when Michigan goes up there, and even though I think Michigan's kind of part of that whole need-based aid group, when Michigan goes plays for a title, then all of a sudden it puts pressure on Michigan State. It puts pressure on Ohio State. It puts pressure on those schools to say, you know what, hey, look at what Michigan did. We need to step up to the plate. And so if college baseball becomes a bigger deal up there, then it helps us nationally to get legislation passed. But right now, basically it's the Big 12, the Pac-12, the SEC, and the ACC. And it's simply not enough. That's just not enough. There's not enough people out there that are saying, hey, let's go out here and really do what we can to advance the game of college baseball. I prefer the college game to the pro game 9 times out of 10. MLB kind of lost me with the last strike deal. I know many of you love the Braves, and listen, I don't fault you for any of that, but I was so sick of the steroid scandal, and every time I turned around, there was some problem with the collective bargaining agreement, and these millionaires weren't getting enough money, the owners were getting too much money, owners didn't think they were getting enough, so now they're gutting minor league baseball, which means there's less of an opportunity for college baseball players to advance their careers to the professional level. And so that probably needed to happen in some respects. Minor league baseball had gotten a little bit bloated. And you had a lot of guys out there that never had a chance to make the big leagues that were just kind of out there to fill out a roster. And so, if I'm an owner, I only want guys in the minor league system who are going to develop and potentially one day be a part of the big league club. And so I understand that aspect of it. But I also understand that when Ethan Small gets drafted in the first round, then the first thing he has to do is write a check to pay off his student loans, that's not fair. If Ethan Small had excelled in the game of basketball or the game of football, he wouldn't have had to have those student loans. But because he excelled in baseball and that became his ticket to college education and a chance to parlay his athletic abilities into a professional baseball opportunity, he had to pay to play. As the son of a former college baseball player, I can tell you it's not cheap. I'm still paying for that. Still paying loans. My kids make...
Look around you. That car you're driving. That house your family lives in. Making your daughter laugh. Inspiring her to dream. You did that. Teaching your son to drive. Teaching him he can be anything. All you. And your dreams for tomorrow. You'll do that too. Legacies don't just happen. They are made by you. The important word being you. American Family Insurance, protecting your dreams as you achieve them. Insure carefully, dream fearlessly.
Products not available in every state. American Family Mutual Insurance Company, SI, and its operating companies. American Family Life Insurance Company, 6000 American Parkway, Madison, Wisconsin.
Johnsonville sausage strips are strips of sausage that look and cook like bacon. They come in amazing flavors like original, maple, or chorizo. Now, you can transform your BLT into an SLT or turn your bacon cheeseburger into a chorizo cheeseburger. It's not bacon. It's Johnsonville sausage strips. And it's a meaty miracle. Find it by the bacon, even though it's sausage.
Married and got a family of his own and doing well. And matter of fact, he'll have all his student loans paid off here in the next year. I'm still paying that parent loan because you do what you have to help your kids. And I would do it 10 times over just because I wanted him to have the opportunity to play. Now, yeah, he got a scholarship. He signed a national letter of intent. They had some financial aid for him, but it wasn't enough. It's a partial scholarship sport, and I'm sure that Williams Baptist College didn't make any money on baseball. I'm sure it's a losing proposition. But be that as it may, it's not fair that just because somebody excels in a sport that's not a revenue-producing sport that we say, well, okay, we're not going to give you guys full scholarships. And you would say, well, Steve, let's let the market dictate that. Okay, cool. So what are you doing women's basketball? They're not generating any money. It's a drain on the athletic department, but yet we're fully funding those scholarships. In Mississippi State, we actually make money on baseball. So why shouldn't we have the ability to kind of spread that money around a little bit and help some of our student athletes be able to get their college education and pay their expenses? This doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I'm not going to rant and rave about this a whole lot, but I think it is beyond time for us to establish divisions in college baseball that are equitable, that are good for both sides, both the haves and the have-nots, to give the have-nots maybe a chance to play. I think that's better for the game too. I mean, it's like, hey, we can't go win and play in Omaha, but what if we set up, a College World Series for, FCS schools, and hey, those guys go play in Indianapolis or something, and kind of give them something else to shoot for, because everybody knows when you're in one of those G5 conferences, I mean, the chances of you making it to Omaha are pretty slim. The chances of you winning are even slimmer. That's why we remember Coastal Carolina and people like that and Fresno State, because they're the outliers. Usually it's a Power 5 school that wins it. And so, maybe the Power 5 schools should have their own league, and maybe the G5 schools should have their own league, and that way, if we want to fully fund baseball, we can. They don't have to. They won't be required to. They don't even have to have baseball. Those are the things that just kind of keep me up sometimes, and I get real frustrated and aggravated about that. I know you guys do as well. But those are my thoughts on it, so let's kind of move forward. Bulldog Burger Company, longtime sponsors of the show. Man, I was there twice over the weekend. Had a great time both times. It's a great atmosphere, great food, great prices, great service. 2 locations now to serve you right here on University Drive in Star Vegas and on Gloucester Street there in Tupelo. When we go, we always get spring rolls. After the ball game on Sundays, I was late getting there because I'm the last one to leave the ballpark. And already get there, the spring rolls already on the table. I mean, that's a nice deal, right? I mean, of course, my family had beat me there, and they saved me a spring roll, thankfully. But, you work through that process, and I'm like, the experience is not complete without having a spring roll. Really like that grilled chicken club sandwich. You will too. I mean, it's really, really good. Sometimes people just don't get the toast right for the sandwich. They do at Bulldog Burger Company. It's fabulous. I didn't get it exactly the way you want it, but I think you're going to like it as it comes. And also, Try the tuna burger. And then try that full of bologna. That's my next mountain to climb there at Bulldog Burger Company is the full of bologna hamburger. That's the 8-ounce patty with bologna and a fried egg. I mean, that's an awful lot of protein. So I'm going to go check it out. You guys should too. I've already had a couple people that said, Steve, I went and had it and it's great. Didn't know what to expect. I gave it a chance and just kind of grabbed that burger with both hands and dug in. And that's the thing, too, man. I mean, great portions for a great price. You're going to get full there. And I had that discussion with my family over the weekend. It's like every time that we go, we bring food home. And sometimes I give it to the dogs. Sometimes I save it for lunch. But I can assure you it gets eaten around here. And it will at your house, too. Bulldog Burger Company, the place where people go to meet. M-E-A-T. All right, let's talk women's basketball. And to be honest with you, I'm kind of tired of talking about women's basketball. But I'd be remiss if we didn't talk about all these transfers. Now, we have had several. The latest to go in is Aliyah Matharu, who was in the transfer portal. Robbie Falk and I, who has kind of been on top of all of this for us, give Robbie a lot of credit, traded some text messages yesterday with Robbie and say, hey, I've kind of heard this. And he goes, yeah, it's a real possibility. She's kind of on the fence. Hadn't really been involved in team basketball activities here for a week or two. And so it was not a big surprise to us. And if you're a member of Gene's page, you probably saw Robbie's post on Monday when he goes, hey, I think there's one more coming. And a lot of people worried it may be a Rickea Jackson. Well, what we have heard is that she plans to stay. So Rickea Jackson's going to stay. Madison Hayes leaves. Yeah, there's a handful. And let me go ahead and share this with you, too. I told you guys for weeks we're going to have transfers. And that wasn't just me kind of betting with house money because, you just say, well, Steve, there's always some level of attrition, and it hadn't been a good year. There are going to be people looking for another alternative. But, some of these players are processed out. Some of these players, kind of understood, kind of moving forward, their opportunities here were going to be limited. And some of that's due to their attitudes off the court. And so I'm not going to sit here and defend this season. I'm not going to defend Nikki McCray-Penson. But, we knew there was going to be some attrition. And it's just like with men's basketball where we said, you know what, we knew it's going to be a difficult year. And even though we know that objectively going in, when it happens and you're in the moment, it's like, oh, this is awful. And it is awful. I mean, listen, but here's the deal. We've lost some good players, and we've lost some people that maybe weren't contributors the way they needed to be. And maybe you've lost some players, too, that can't contribute here as players. And maybe you're kind of playing above them. But now Nikki McCray-Penson's got to hit big in the portal. And so there are plenty of options to choose from in the portal. Because what happens a lot of times when you only follow your team, you're only acutely aware of the issues within your program. There are over 750 women's basketball players in the NCAA transfer portal right now. 750. Let that sink in for a second. There were 336 Division I women's basketball teams this year. 336. So you can do the math there. That's basically about 2 per team. Do you think there are 2 spots per team for transfers? I mean, you got some spots on the roster open, but you went out and signed some high school players, some junior college players to fill them. There are going to be a lot of women's basketball players that enter the transfer portal. They're going to have nowhere to go, just like we see in football. That's the downside of the NCAA transfer portal. Is there a lot of people that get caught up in transfer purgatory? What are they going to do? Some of them, that have not played 2 years will have the opportunity to go play junior college basketball and maybe reboot their career. Some will go D2. Some will go play NAIA ball. I mean, that's just kind of part of it. But there's over 750 women's basketball players. So that's good for Nikki McCray-Penson. You've got plenty of room to work with, and you may have some spots available that some of your competitors don't. It was announced earlier this evening, Jemiah Mingo-Young going to Alabama. I don't like that. I think Jemiah Mingo-Young could be a good player. And now we're going to contend with her in the West. Wish her the best. And I hope she loses every game to Mississippi State. Syracuse has had 8 players leave their women's program and go in the NCAA transfer portal. 8. And one of the things that we kind of, we kind of gloss over some things too. Vic Schaefer had a lot of transfers too. He didn't lose his core group, but he had transfers every year too. I remember when Rick Stansberry was here, that became the burr in the Bulldog saddle, right? every single year we'd have 2 or 3 guys leave, and like, why can't we have continuity on the roster? Sometimes guys left on their own, sometimes guys were pushed. And that was before the NCAA transfer portal. That's when you had to actually go look your coach in the eye or go look your compliance director in the eye and get a release. Ben Howland has had a lot of transfers. People forget last year, we had a handful of guys declare, pro, and then we had some others that went in the portal. And so college basketball is rife with transfers. Do we have more than most? Yes, we do on the women's side. We do. Also kind of going through some of the growing pains of a coaching change. I had a lot of people kind of reach out to me, I guess kind of unhappy with some of my comments about Vic Schaefer. I don't have anything negative to say about Vic Schaefer on the show. I'm also not rooting for Vic Schaefer in the University of Texas. And they got absolutely shelled by South Carolina again. I think somebody posted a stat on Gene's page that Dawn Staley is 13-3 against Vic Schaefer in her career. I haven't verified those numbers, but I know it's close to that. They've had the better of things, and Vic's a great coach, but Dawn has had a way to win. It's an old rivalry there, and I saw Asia Wilson even tweet about it. And listen, I'm glad that game meant something, and I look forward to it meaning something again. But I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's all going to be okay next year because I don't know that. I think the locker room will probably be better. I think the off-the-court stuff will be better, and I think that'll help the on-the-court stuff. But I don't know that. I'm not going to sit here and tell you it'll ever be as good as it's been because I don't know that. And I don't know that I believe that. I believe we probably caught lightning in the bottle. Does that mean that we're not going to get back to the Sweet 16 or have a chance to advance? No, I think that's going to happen. Because I think we've built a pedigree here and we've shown coaches around the country that we can win and that our fans will support women's college basketball. So I think we've grown as a program in that respect that we have definitely demonstrated to future coaching candidates that you can come here and win big and get major support. As Vic used to say all the time, this is a special deal at Mississippi State. There are a lot of great teams out there that win a lot of games that play in half-filled arenas. That just wasn't the case here at Mississippi State. And there are a lot of people out there that have all these opinions. They don't have a lot of facts, but they have a lot of opinions on why Vic Schaefer left. There's not always somebody to blame. We kind of major in guilt installation sometimes as Bulldog fans. Well, you need to feel bad about this. We did this wrong. We need to do that. And, one of the things that I've learned, and, that this was one of the things that there's some people, that Vic was very close to here in town and around the state of Mississippi that were very, very, very invested in women's basketball. And, that was the thing, down the stretch when Vic wouldn't sign the contract extension, they kept saying he's got a problem with the buyout. 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 Well, let me ask you this. If somebody's not looking to leave, why do they care what the buyout is? I know some people want to romanticize all this stuff, because, Vic kind of speaks our language. And we think, well, he's one of us. And in many respects, he was and is. He's not here anymore. But if somebody's totally committed to your program, why are they objecting to the buyout? And there's some more details about that I have that I won't share. But it's like, if you want to blame somebody for Vic Schaefer not being here, blame Vic Schaefer. If Vic Schaefer wanted to be here, he'd be here. He saw another opportunity, did what he thought was best for he and his family, and I have no objection to that. I don't begrudge Vic Schaefer that. I'm very grateful to Vic for what he did when he was here. But as I did with the top 10 list for those of us that just can't seem to move on, with the breakup songs, and I got a ton of reaction from that. A lot of people loved it. Some people didn't. And if I hurt your feelings, good. So if I step on your toes about this stuff, I hope it hurts. I just don't see, what we benefit for continuing to try to belabor the point of all this stuff. Nikki McCray-Penson's our coach. For better or for worse, she's our coach. She's going to get next year. And so why would we root for her to fail? If we really love women's basketball, and if we really love competing for championships and going to the NCAA tournament and hosting the first 2 rounds, Why would we root against her? Like I see people that say, "Oh, just wait till next year; it's going to be even worse." Well, is that just because you want to be right? I would love to be wrong about that. I think we're going to be better because I think, number one, you've got a staff here now that kind of understands what it takes to compete in this league a little bit. I mean, because you get punched in the mouth over here. This is the SEC. You're not going to be able to just out-athlete people in this league. You're going to have to be able to be good X's and O's. You're going to have to be a great recruiter. And Nikki is a great recruiter. And if you talk to people in AAU circles, they'll tell you they do a great job recruiting. And she's going to have to. And she's going to have to do a great job recruiting that portal to get players that are ready to plug and play. We're not going to be able to just go sign a bunch of developmental players and say, okay, we're building for the future. It's got to be dramatically better next year. It has to be. And I think Rakia Jackson is a very, very talented player. She's got to grow up a little bit. But you probably can build a team around her. And she's got to be a good teammate as well. But I don't understand why we would ever cheer against a coach at Mississippi State. It reminds me a little bit of, back in 2019 that we're getting ready to go play the Egg Bowl, a chance that would have, a game that would have allowed us to achieve bowl eligibility and extend the bowl streak and keep the egg here. And we had some Mississippi State fans saying, I hope Ole Miss wins the game. What? So we're cheering for Ole Miss because we don't like Joe? And say, well, maybe it's better for the program long term. No, there is never a point at any time in our history where losing to Ole Miss was a good thing for Mississippi State. And so I haven't spent a lot of time with Nikki McCray-Penson. I'm sure she doesn't even know my name. And you know what? That's okay. She doesn't need to know my name. She needs to go win basketball games. And so I'm going to root for her to do really well on the recruiting trail. I'm going to root for her to go get the difference makers out of this portal that she can get, because at least she can sell, listen, we got playing time opportunities here. We have great fan support. We have great facilities. We have great tradition. You can come be a part of that. We're going to turn this thing around. You can be a big part of that. I think it's a pretty easy sell. Now, there are going to be other people out there that are going to say, you know what, hey, you don't need to go over there. Just go look at Twitter. Those fans hate her. She's not going to be there a year. There's no point transferring there. We're going to be here. She's not going to be there. Those people are ready to run her out of town. I'm not saying don't be upset. I'm not saying don't be frustrated. But that's the reality of life. I remember in the late 90s when, I'd get reports from some high school coaches, early 2000s, that we'd have message board posts that people would print out and mail recruits. And some of that was plants. I mean, some of it was fans, masquerading as rival school fans, and then they'd post something to make it look like, a kid was not being fully appreciated by the fan base, and they'd mail it to the kids. You can say, Steve, that's silly. It happened. So, you can feel whatever, however you want to about it. But, it's, again, I'm not going to begrudge you your opinion. But I don't understand, getting out there and blasting our coach on social media. I just don't know how that – does that make you feel better? That's the thing I don't understand. It's like, I understand, like, if I've got a relationship with somebody and there's some dark clouds between us and we need to clear the air, and sometimes I might not be especially diplomatic, kind of share my point of view, and I might have to say something and I may be a little gruff in my delivery. I don't understand getting on social media and going attacking our official accounts, because it's usually some student running that stuff, right? It's like there's just some kid out there that's on work study that's tweeting, on behalf of the university or whatever, and doing updates and tweeting out, stats or whatever. And then we got some of our fans out there attacking those people. It's just not a good look. It's not. And listen, I'm no Pollyanna. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that, things are going to be great. I'm not going to sit here and say Nikki McCray-Penson is going to make it, because I don't know. But I know that she's got next year, and I know that getting on social media, and I deal with it every day on the message boards. It's a handful of people that are almost agenda-driven. And no matter what the thread says, no matter what it's about, they're going to find a way to make it about what they want to talk about. And they're going to get on there, and I made a decision yesterday. I'm not going to read this stuff for 6 months. I'm not going to do it. Not going to do it. I'll put up with it during the season We're not playing games now. We get to this transfer stuff, and, it's not going to do it. There's some people out there that are so committed to being miserable, it doesn't matter. It's like I go back to the whole decision not to play in the women's NIT. In hindsight, that was absolutely the right decision. Absolutely the right decision. And so maybe, just maybe, we should give Nikki McRae-Penson a little bit of credit for kind of knowing, the lay of the land at that moment, saying, you know what, this is just not good for us. We need to kind of get into evaluation mode. We need to, let some of these ladies get on transfer out of here, the ones that don't want to be here and the ones that are not going to play here, and open up some scholarship spots, and let's get on there and kind of having an inventory of where we are and what spots we need to fill, rather than going out there and playing a couple basketball games, the chances are we're going to lose. If we had played in the women's NIT and we'd lost those 2 ball games, you think anybody would be happier? Let me answer that for you. No. I'm a competitor. I want to play games, but I also understand too, if I got to go out there and play with walk-ons and players that don't have a lot of depth, and I got to go out there and embarrass myself in the program, I'm better off not playing. I'm better off letting somebody else that could field a team on the court and go let them play. And so at the time, I kind of like, really? We're not going to play? And then all of a sudden I see all these players hit the portal, and I'm thinking, you know what, hey, there's some things we didn't know. We expected there to be some attrition, ended up being a little bit more than we hoped for, but we knew there'd be some. We talked about it on the show. And so we'll kind of move forward now. But, I think the best thing for all of us, and I can't sit here and tell you how to act, but I think the best thing for us is to get out here and just say, you know what, maybe I'm not even cautiously optimistic about next year, but I'm going to support our coach as long as she's our coach. I'm going to support our student athletes as long as they're our student athletes. I mean, some of you are so loyal to our student athletes, you still support them even after they're gone somewhere else. Saw a lot of pro Chloe Bibby tweets the other day. That reminds me, too, some people try to pin that on Nikki McRae-Penson, too. Guys, Chloe Bibby was leaving no matter who was the coach of Mississippi State. And then the day after Vic Schaefer announced he's going to Texas, Chloe Bibby announced she's going in the portal. And people said, oh, she's going to Texas. There was no chance of her going to Texas. That relationship had soured a long time ago. But let's romanticize it a little bit more, right? Right? Because sometimes we think, because we get a chance to go take pictures with these players and we know them and we follow them on social media and they say such things that we think we know them. But we don't. We don't know them. We don't know what's going on behind the scenes. We don't. And so, well, it seems like such a good kid. It seems is one thing. The reality sometimes is something different. And that's not exclusive to women's basketball. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that every student athlete that we've ever signed or coached and developed has been a great lady or gentleman. We've had some people too. I mean, they're people are people. We've had some student athletes come through here that have been absolute turds. That's the truth. But you know what? They go out there and score a few points for us, and they get in the end zone a little bit and put a ball in a basket or score a few runs, and we're like, hey, that's my guy. Well, your guy causes a lot of trouble too. Your guy's out there in the Cotton District, raising hell every weekend. Your guy missed a workout one day because he was hungover from being out partying the night before. Your guy got into an argument in front of a bunch of kids and used a bunch of profanity. But you don't know those things. And so sometimes I'm content to let people live with their illusions. But just because we know their names and just because we see them on TV, we don't know them. We don't. We interact with them as the media, but you got to understand too, when we deal with them, they're putting their best foot forward with us. I live here. I live in Starkville. I got 2 girls in college at Mississippi State. I hear a lot of these stories, and some of them are very embarrassing. But also understand, college kids are going to be college kids. I can promise you there's nothing these college kids have done that I didn't do. So I'm not going to sit here in judgment and be hypocritical about it. But let's also kind of understand that our limited interaction with these student athletes, when they are representing the university at an event, you're going to see them at their best. But you don't know them. No, you absolutely don't know them. Let's go to Top 10 List, brought to you by Dr. Robert Yarborough. This is our last day with Doc. And again, as I shared with you guys on Monday, Even though Doc Yarber is going to go away for a while, he may come back. Got a new sponsor for the top 10 list starting Friday. I want you to give Doc an opportunity to take care of you. Many of you deal with chronic sinus pain, all this puffiness around the eyes, and you've tried to kind of take care of it yourself. Maybe you're just thinking, I'm just content to live this way because there's no solution. Well, you're probably wrong. There's probably a real opportunity for you to get treatment that not only is beneficial, but is long-lasting. Dr. Yarber is part of a great family of physicians, the ENT Physicians of North Mississippi. Of course, that's ear, nose, and throat, right? 2 locations to serve you. Right here in Stark, Vegas, right there on Stark Road. Let me give you the exact address. 910 Stark Road. You should know it by now. 910 Stark Road. And then 618 Peakham Drive there in Tupelo. Do this for yourself. And, if you've got kids that have these chronic sinus problems, it may not be allergies. It may be something a little more substantial. So deal with somebody who specializes in those issues. Ear, nose, and throat problems. Dr. Yarber is a bulldog through and through. He's been doing this forever and a day. I've known Doc, going on 20 years. Dr. Yarber is going to take care of you and your family. Give him a call today. And again, this is our last time with Dr. Yarber for a while. And so I want to make sure that he gets his money's worth here, because this is not just about me, stumping here for an advertiser. I'm doing this for you, because many of you have kind of put these problems off for a long time. It's time that you bring these things to a head and get a real solution today. 662-844-6513. Again, that's 662-844-6513. Dr. Robert Yarber of the ENT Physicians of North Mississippi. So we talked about Creed here recently and how Creed is now the most listened to Spotify list, top 10 list. And so Sean Brown reached out to me, longtime listener of the show, and Sean wanted to test our theory a little bit. I've suggested that Creed is kind of a dirty pleasure for many people. It's kind of a guilty pleasure, I guess is a better way to put that. It's like we listen to Creed and we love Creed, but we don't want to admit that we like Creed. I've got no problem telling you that I really liked Creed, and I love Creed without Scott Stapp. It's a band known as Alter Bridge, one of my favorite bands of all time. I think Mark Tremonti is the best guitarist of this generation. But you guys didn't just go listen to Creed because I told you that I liked Creed. You went and listened to Creed because you like Creed. So we're going to test that theory a little bit today. And we're going to do a list that might be a little taboo in some circles. And you know what? I'm okay with this. I know Jake Mangum will approve. We're doing top 10 Nickelback songs. Yeah, you heard that right. We're doing Nickelback today. Roy does not approve, and that's okay. When Roy starts his show, he can do his own list. But we're going to, Roy's my buddy. But so we're doing Nickelback today because I want to see how many of you guys are going to go listen to this. Now, everybody's got a favorite Nickelback song. I don't care what you tell your friends. I don't care what you post on Facebook. You have enjoyed Nickelback. And I remember years ago when all you guys had Rockstar as your ringtone on your phone, back when people had ringtones. I remember all that. You're not going to fool me. I can't count how many times I'd go to lunch with guys when I worked in the mortgage business, and I'd get in, everybody's listening to Nickelback. And so was there some fatigue? Yeah, absolutely there was. I don't even know how I got started, though. I don't know why people picked Nickelback. Nickelback rocked. Had some great songs, and people hate on them. I think, why do we hate on Nickelback when there's, a perfectly rotten band like Green Day out there that we can talk about that have had, what a couple of hits, and Billy Joe can't sing, can't play. It's awful. It's absolutely awful. Green Day sucks, man. And so for those of you that like Green Day over Nickelback, this is for you, because Nickelback is sort of a ton more records than Green Day. All right, so here we go. Here's some honorable mentions that didn't make the list. Feed the Machine, which is a title track off the most recent album, came out a few years back. If Today Was Your Last Day, which is actually a really cool song and video, probably should have made the list. One of the deep tracks that I really like a lot is Feeling Way Too Damn Good, because something's got to go wrong because I'm feeling way too damn good. And then Side of a Bullet, and I could have put this one on there. That's from All the Right Reasons album. So Side of a Bullet is about Dimebag Darrell from Pantera and Damage Plan. If you don't know the story, I'd encourage you to look it up. Dimebag Darrell Abbott out of Texas, kind creator. Pantera used to kind of be like an 80s hair band, and then they kind of transformed. That's kind of a dirty little secret that a lot of people don't know. But he used to be Diamond Daryl. He became Dimebag Daryl, which is a much cooler name. But so Dime was killed on stage during a Damage Plan show. There was a former Pantera fan that was crazy and had mental illness or whatever. And I'm not going to excuse the behavior. That guy got up there and killed some people. And that just shouldn't happen. And he had to be held accountable for that, and he's responsible for his actions. But Dime was taken from us far too soon. And so Side of a Bullet is about that. Side of a Bullet is about the guy jumping up on stage and shooting and killing Dimebag Daryl. And the guitar solo on this song is an outtake of a Pantera song that was never released. It was a solo that Dime had done. And so Side of a Bullet is believed to be one of the last things that Dimebag Daryl contributed to. Side of a Bullet. All right, so here are the top 10 Nickelback songs. You can like it, love it, but I know you're going to listen to it. Number 10, the first single, Leader of Men. The very first time I heard of them, and that's back when they were really kind of more of an alternative rock band, before they kind of found their sound. Number 9, a Duty Noble favorite during the Nickelback Sundays, Burn It to the Ground. I know that Eric Sarantola is a big fan of that song, and I think Jake Mangum told me that's his favorite one. One of my favorites, and I love the opening percussion on this, is Follow You Home. Love it, love the vocals on it. It is an absolute rocking tune. Follow You Home. Number 7, Too Bad. And that was an absolute banger, man. It seemed like everybody, when that song was on the radio, everybody listened to it. It's just real catchy. You got great guitar riff on it. Number 6, one it's a little bit risque, and I dig it, man. I dig it. It's called Figured You Out. Because I hate the places that we go. I hate the people that you know. I hate the way you pass the check. Yeah, Figured You Out is a cool track. It's not one you need to listen to with the kids in the car. Number 5, many of you probably have this number 1. I don't, because it was overplayed. But I tell you, it was an incredible song when it was released. And, it was around the time, too. My dad was real sick, too, so maybe I'm a little sentimental about it. But it's Photograph. Look at this photograph. Every time I do, it makes me laugh. And listen, it makes me think about my friends back home, too. Number 4, your favorite ringtone back in the day, Rockstar. And that's a catchy song, and it's great. It got played over and over and over again. I think that's one of the things that kind of led to some of the Nickelback fatigue. Number 3, going back a couple of albums, is How You Remind Me. I think this is one of the best songs by far. Number 2, for me, and I think it's the best of the ballads, is Far Away. But the number 1 Nickelback song to me is Someday. How the hell do we wind up like this? Love that song. And listen, I'm unashamed in my admission that I thought Nickelback was great. And they're still, when their tours are allowed, they're still packing out arenas. And so it's like I wonder, if everybody hates Nickelback, who's going to these shows? Who's still buying these records? Maybe you're not ready to wear the shirt, but people are going to the shows. And then one of the best videos that made the rounds a couple of years ago was Nickelback did a Metallica medley live at some big festival, and people absolutely lost their minds. And so Sean, there you go. We're going to test your theory, and we're going to see where Nickelback ends up and see if it creeps into the top 10 of Roy's most listened to Spotify list. So there you go, top 10 Nickelback. Roy, again, I will again say for the record, Roy was against this list. He was. And he will be a soldier and put it up for you guys because he's committed to the show. But when I first said that we're going to do this, Roy sent the vomit emoji. That's how much he was. But I think Roy, too, has been brainwashed by many of you. It's like for a while there, all we could ever talk about on Facebook is bacon and zombies and how much we didn't like Nickelback. It's weird. It's weird how that all worked out. I guess that's when The Walking Dead first came out, and I don't know what the bacon thing was all about. But Nickelback, everybody had a favorite Nickelback song. I don't care what you say. I don't care what you're willing to admit. You be honest with yourself. There was a time in your life that you loved Nickelback. Maybe take a trip down memory lane today and enjoy some of these tunes. Campus Book Mart, I was there on Saturday, and I love going in there, man. It's like every time I go in there, it's like going into Cheers. Everybody's so happy to see me. But it's not just restricted to me. It's not just because of the fact that they sell my books, and it's not, I do all these book signings there. They were doing that for me, when I was just a regular Bulldog fan going in there and buying stuff, man. I mean, they've always treated me great. They are like family to me now. And I travel to trade shows with them and sign books for them, and I'm happy to do it. I'm happy to help all of our local vendors, but Campus Book Mart has been with me a long time. And so if you are in town, go by and see Stand and Man, Miss Kathy Brown, the lovely, talented Susie. She gets lovelier by the day. You'll be glad you did. A lot of new merch in there, too. And we picked up a bunch of Nickelback Sunday jerseys on Saturday. Had to outfit my boys before they came to Duty Noble Field. And so we got those jerseys, and I got one, too. And I wore it yesterday to show my solidarity, or on Monday, to show my solidarity with our baseball team, even though we weren't playing a game. Because I'm still true maroon, or true black in that case. But if you can't make it to town, you can get your nickel black jersey online by going to campusbookmart.net. And by being a loyal Boneyard listener, we'll give you a phrase that pays, and that's BSR, which stands for Beautiful Steve Robertson. Go check it out today. Stand and Man and the crew will take care of you. They'll get that stuff turned around quick, too. That's one of the things I had so many people when we first started doing this. They said, Steve, I've never even been in Campus Book Mart until you start talking about them. And then people would say, I've never even ordered there before, but I ordered one day and I had it 2 days later. And in some cases, they had it the next day. I mean, these people know how to do business. So again, that's campusbookmart.net, promo code BSR, which stands for Beautiful Steve Robertson, get you free shipping on all orders over $50. All right, let's talk a little bit about baseball now. We got Kentucky coming in on Thursday. Wildcats now 18-4 and 5-1 in league play. They took care of Bellarmine. Man, it seems like Bellarmine has played everybody we have this year. Bellarmine makes it a ball game. Kentucky wins the game 4-3, and it's kind of crazy. Bellarmine 8-14 on the year, but man, they're going to be battle tested in their league. I mean, goodness gracious. Bellarmine actually made it a ball game. It was 4-3 in the seventh. They scratched a run across there in the seventh, and actually led at one point. 1-0. Kentucky gets right back to them. But, hey, good on Bellarmine for getting out there and making a game of this thing, for sure, and maybe giving Kentucky a bit of a scare. So let's kind of take a look here. Let me run down the schedule here for you real quick, just so you guys kind of understand what's happened here. I'm not going to do every game. They had that first series of Carolina canceled. Then they take Miami of Ohio, and then they take 3 from Milwaukee. Get Eastern Kentucky, Evansville, take a 1 out of 3 against Ball State. Take a midweek game from Western Kentucky. And this is when they kind of started figuring some things out. They sweep Georgia State when Georgia State was really playing well. They lose a midweek game to Murray State. Take 2 out of 3 from Mizzou. And then last week they beat Butler and then swept Auburn at Auburn. Butch Thompson, those guys really having some tough times on the Plains. But Kentucky, listen, they're playing well. And listen, I'm a Nick Mingione fan, and it's so funny. I've heard people say, you know what, you either love Nick or you hate him. Well, I love him, and he was so great to me when he was here. And that's when, Ani was a kid, just kind of growing up and coming to camps and stuff. And Nick always remembered his name. And when I would meet Nick, just socially or whatever, I'd be out, and the very first question he'd ask me is, hey, how's Ani doing? And he didn't owe that to me. That's just kind of who he is. And Nick has an amazing story. I guess many of you people don't realize this, but, when Nick was the volunteer assistant coach at Kentucky, he wanted it so bad he lived in his car. And then eventually John let him stay in the facility, because he would get cold out there in those those winter nights or whatever. But Nick Mingione is a guy that has come up the hard way, and he has a great story. And it's crazy to think that he's now the head coach at Kentucky after he used to sleep in the locker room. I got a lot of respect for Nick Mingione. This is a guy that knows the short game. This is a guy that's going to drill these guys out. He's not going to accept anything less than, the best out of his guys. And people remember, too, there are a lot of people that suggested when Andy Cannizaro was resigned here at Mississippi State that Nick Mingione was going to be the guy. A lot of people say, well, John, let's go hire Nick. Probably could have, but we didn't. And I remember how unfair it was that the day that we had to go play Jackson State, the first day without Andy Cannizaro, that Nick and them had a midweek game, and then the very first question he's asking post-game is about the Mississippi State job. I mean, your goodness, guys, trying to go, put his team on the field and trying to get things together. And there were a lot of people, listen, it's a reasonable question to ask, but I didn't think a lot of that was fair to Nick, to be honest with you. And it wasn't our media that was doing it. It was just other people that were kind of being a little bit lazy, that didn't have true knowledge of the search, and said, well, that just makes sense. And I get the connection there, but, Nick's, got his own program now, and wish him the best. But let's look at some of these statistics here from Kentucky, kind of looking at this. And it's impressive. I mean, listen, these guys have been hot. Now, the quality of competition has not been outstanding. Auburn, of course, winless in the SEC. Mizzou has one win, and that was the Sunday game over Kentucky. So they haven't exactly played the best of competition. They have beaten the last-place team in the West and the last-place team in the East. Austin Schultz is a guy that kind of stirs the drink for them. Junior infielder, hitting .352. On-base percentage of .917. That's absolutely getting it done there. 8 doubles, a couple triples, 8 RBI. It's a guy that gets out and makes things happen for him. Doesn't strike out a whole lot, but enough that you could think you could get him on a swing and miss. Trey Harmon is a guy that feels like he's been there forever. He's from Somerset, Kentucky, plays first base for them, is a power guy, is a corner infielder. He's got a couple of bombs this year. This is an RBI guy for them. They got 10 RBI. Ryan Ritter is another guy hitting .324 for them. Ryan Ritter, another infielder, 6'2", 190 out of Tinley Park, Illinois. Just a sophomore. But another guy that's doing a great job for them. Started all 22 games, 23 hits, got a double, triple, home run, 6 ribbies. But he's one of those guys, too, defensively, a guy that's not going to give you a whole lot. And let me make sure you guys get ready for this, too, because I don't know that anybody else is going to point this out to you. Kentucky is going to run the bases. That's kind of who Nick Mingione is. He recruits that skill set. He is a guy that likes his guys to be irritants on the base. He likes to kind of get in heads, and it works. Kentucky on the year, 33 of 33 in stolen base attempts. They have not been caught stealing once. Austin Schultz, the primary thief, there with a dozen. And then you get down a little bit deeper, Cam Hill, 7 of 7. But as a team, 33 of 33. So it's going to be a real challenge there for Logan Tanner. The Bulldog catchers are going to have to do a good job keeping those guys close. And, of course, the Bulldog pitchers are going to have to do what they can to kind of keep those leads from getting a little bit elongated. But you best believe Nick Mingione himself has watched film of all of our pitchers to kind of get an idea of what we do going to first. What's our move? What are some of the tells that we have? You better believe he has broken this thing down. Now, looking at their pitching staff, I guess before we move on here, biggest home run hitter for them, TJ Collette. Number 5, TJ Collette, grad student from Terre Haute, Indiana, has come in, done a good job for them. 8 bombs, 27 RBIs. And they got a handful of guys that can swing it. They got 25 home runs, so they're not nearly as prolific as, say, LSU or Arkansas, but they're a team that can launch the ball a little bit. So you got to be careful, got to get under some bad angles and kind of have them beat the ball on the ground. But the power numbers are pretty evenly distributed. You got a handful of guys that have home runs. And these are guys, too. Again, you make mistakes, they're going to make you pay for them. Let's look at pitching here. So a lot of guys have pitched for them, for sure. Like a lot of people, in non-conference, they're going to get out and go do some things and make some things happen. Ryan Hagenow, and Ryan, I'm sorry if I misspelled or I mispronounced that, out of Knoxville, Tennessee. You kind of ask yourself, how does this guy go to Kentucky and not Knoxville? But he has primarily been, a midweek guy for them, so I doubt we see him. But outstanding, 5 starts for them with a 1-0 record and an ERA of 1. Obviously doing a good job for them. Cole Stoop is a guy that has been around a little bit, sophomore out of Milton, Georgia, and has pitched some on SEC weekends. So I'm sure we will see him. He is a 6'4", 205-pound right-hander with a 1.47 ERA, 3-0 record, 30 innings pitched, has allowed almost a hit per inning and strikes out about 1 per inning as well. Doesn't walk a lot either. 31 Ks against just the 4 bases on balls. And so that's what's going to happen. We talk about Nick Mingione. they're not a team that's going to beat themselves. You're going to have to go out there and beat those guys. Mason Hazelwood is a left-hander out of Mercer County High School there in Kentucky. He's another guy that has kind of worked as an opener. He goes three innings last weekend against Auburn and went 5 the weekend before against Missouri. But a left-hander, and we actually hit left-handers pretty well. But this is a guy that we should expect to see as well. And so kind of working through this thing, Zach Lee is another that right-handed pitcher from Effingham, Illinois. There's also pitched on SEC weekends. None of these guys are going very deep. 4 2/3 against Mizzou and 5 innings against Auburn. But that's pretty much what we're doing too, right? I mean, a lot of people are just trying to get through the order a couple times and get to the bullpen. That's been the issue with Kentucky, though. The bullpen has kind of been a bit shaky at times, and if they had a true closer, they would have been able to sweep Missouri. So those are the names I think you should prepare for. There's not a lot of guys on here that have gaudy numbers that you look at them and say, man, these guys are just absolutely awful. You know, the one guy that really has, an ERA that's just blown up is Hunter Rigsby. But, he's a right-handed pitching and relief pitcher that he's only pitched 1 2/3 of an inning on the year. So, you have a couple of bad hitters there. Next thing you know, your numbers get a little bit blown out of shape. But, Zach Camman, I think I'm pronouncing that name correctly, a grad student from Illinois, has been a middle reliever for them and pitched a couple of innings against Missouri, allowed 1 hit on 1 run, and then 1 hit and 2 runs against Auburn. His numbers are elevated just a little bit with a 7.94 ERA, but he hadn't pitched a whole lot. So a lot of that is just, it's a matter of math rather than magic. But the guys that have primarily been the guys to eat up innings is, Cole Stoop, Mason Hazelwood, Zach Lee, and a couple more. But primarily we kind of know who those guys are going to be. And based on my research and talking to people that have watched Kentucky, the pitching is good. It's not great. It's not elite. It's probably not what we have seen the first 3 weekends of SEC play. Now, the problem that I have with all of that is this, I have such high esteem for Mississippi State baseball. I grew up with Will Clark and Rafael Palmeiro rocking everybody's ace. You know what I'm saying? We weren't scared. We didn't care. I remember in 89, 90, it didn't matter. You could trot Ben McDonald out there and we'd hit a walk-off bomb to beat him. Those are the things that I look at and I say, okay, when did we get to this point that we had to start hoping that somebody didn't have great pitching? Listen, I understand, great pitching beats great hitting. I understand that. That's part of the deal. But I don't want to have to hold my breath every weekend and say, well, their pitching's not great, so we should win. I expect us to win all the time. And that's where I think Jay Gocher and Chris Lamanos have to figure this thing out. We've seen some great arms, but you know what? Historically, we have rocked some great arms. I understand sometimes baseball is a game of attrition. You got to wait a guy out, just kind of bide your time and get in the bullpen and win the game. I understand baseball. I understand that. But I also understand, too, that there were times when pitchers were scared to face Mississippi State. They say, you know what, we can't go in there and make a mistake to this guy. Because if this guy gets on base and the guy behind him is going to hit a home run. We can't go out there and let Pete Young get out there and hit with men on base. Because we know Pete Young's going to kill us. We can't go out there and let Tracy Eccles lead off an inning and get on base because Eccles is going to go steal the bag. And he's going to get in our pitcher's head. I mean, so it's like, I don't want to think we ever have to lower the hurdles when it comes to Mississippi State baseball. I don't think, based on the numbers, you look at Kentucky and say, you know what, hey, this team looks pretty good. I think based on the level of competition they played, some of this is kind of propped up by the lack of competition. But we can't afford to go into this thing overlooking them or disrespecting them because they're going to come in here with a lot of confidence. I am sure right now Mingione is in those kids' heads saying, guys, we're going to go down there and win the series. And they're believing. I'm sure they are. They're 18-4. They're 5-1 in the league, and I'm sure he's telling them, hey, guys, you know what? We're 1 bad inning away from being undefeated in the SEC and being number 1, being ahead of Vanderbilt, being tied for first place in the SEC after 2 weekends. And so they're going to come in here ready to play. And for all of you that were upset about the Tulane dugout, let me tell you, Kentucky is going to be Tulane on steroids when it comes to dugout play. They're going to hang on every pitch because they understand. And listen, let's be brutally honest with one another here. We're family, right? Outside of a couple of guys, do we look mentally tough on the mound? Tulane got to us a little bit. They did, and we reacted. We kind of flexed on them, right? And then Arkansas gets in our heads a little bit. They're going to come down here looking to institute some mental warfare against us. And so every time you throw a ball, they're all going to holler. Whenever they get to make a play, they're going to holler. And so we need a lot of Bulldog fans in the crowd. They're going to holler because we got to be able to drown that out. And I thought one of the things last weekend, unlike Tanner Allen, I didn't think our crowd stayed engaged as much as we should have. And I understand it's frustrating. But one of the things at Duty Noble Field that we have is when things are going our way, we get really loud. When things aren't going our way, sometimes we kind of sit on our hands or we're waiting for something to happen. Sometimes the dude effect has to be a part of that. We got to get going. We got to get out there when a pitcher's on the ropes. We need to help knock him off the ropes and onto the mat. That's part of the deal. That's part of home field advantage. And so I hope this weekend, since we are opening some things back up, and listen, people need to be understanding there's going to be more tickets available than there has been all year long. And you're going to be able to walk around out in the outfield. You're not going to be cordoned off from any of that stuff. And so, again, as we talked about a few weeks back, when Tate opened this thing up, you're going to see it kind of roll out in phases. Each week it's going to get a little bit better. Eastern Michigan, we had a bunch more tickets available. We're on the road the next weekend. We come back for Arkansas. We got more tickets available. It's going to be so now all of a sudden we get to Kentucky, we got more tickets available. And so we're kind of graduating and trending back, and I know that's not enough for everybody, but I think this weekend, your friends being able to leave the grandstand and come visit you in Left Field Lounge that's big. That's big. But there are a lot of people that just aren't coming. There are a lot of people that buy tickets saying, you know what, I want to be able to go see baseball Super Bulldog weekend, and I want to be able to go to the regional, and maybe I get over there for once, twice. There's a lot of out-of-state season ticket holders, and we're very grateful for them. And many of them do a good job making sure that their tickets end up in the hands of Bulldogs that want to come to a ball game rather than on StubHub. And there's only so much you can do to curtail some of that. And I know there's some people out there that buy tickets, and that's exactly what they want to do. They want to buy tickets and then be able to overcharge their Bulldog brothers and sisters for tickets. And I just think it's shameful. I don't think we should ever profit off each other in that respect. And I know some people will say, they're my tickets, I'll do what I want to. I get it. But there has been a time in your life when you didn't have tickets and you wanted tickets, and you were doing what you can to find them. And if somebody tried to price gouge you and gig you and get more money from you, you wouldn't have appreciated it. And so let's not sit here and say we're family when I'm going to charge you $85 for a general admission ticket. Speaking of a square deal, let's talk about Portico. Make Portico your next move. Many of you have considered moving to Starkville permanently. I think you should. I love it here. I do. I'm here from now on. I'm not looking to go anywhere. I'm happy here. I'm happy doing what we do. I love the energy in town. Love when you guys come visit. But listen, you can come be a part of this too. And maybe it's a part-time thing for you too. Maybe you're like, you know what, Steve, I'm not ready to make the move, but I want to get a place there, and I'll be up there for all ball game weekends, and maybe eventually I'll retire there. Well, Portico might be the perfect place for you. So when you come off 82 onto 12, that very first right is Pat Station Road. You get to the four-way stop, it becomes Garrett Road. It's right here behind the Chrysler Jeep dealership. You're going to be very happy there. It's just over a mile from campus. You could run there if you wanted to. Driving's a lot easier, but you could run on campus if you wanted to. So this is going to be a pretty sizable development. And phase one, there's only a few houses left. And so if you're looking to move to Starkville, if you're in the housing market now is the time to maybe reach out to Brooks to kind of get some information. And maybe, you know what, if you're planning to make a move this summer when the kids get out of school, it's never too early to start doing your due diligence. Houses going to range in size from 1,300 to 2,000 square feet, 2-bedroom, 2-bath, up to 4-bedroom, 4-bath. Maybe it's an investment property for you. Maybe it's a second home for you. Maybe it's your primary residence. Portico is going to have what you need. Give Brooks a call today. He might even have some information on Pat McMahon that he'll share with you, some great stories. You may not even have to ask him. Brooks loves talking baseball. Brooks' phone number is 601-416-8075. Again, that's 601-416-8075. Brooks is a friend of mine. He'll be a friend of you and introduce you to a lot of new friends in Starkville by being one of the new Starkvilleans. So go check him out today. Let's talk a little recruiting before we get out the door. We have talked at length about how deep the in-state class is for football. And I contend to you that I believe this year is going to be everything many people tried to tell you 2019 was. I do think there are some headline players in 2019, not a lot of depth. A lot of depth this year. Also some real headliners on defense. I think the best of this state is on defense. You got Branson Robinson at running back, one of the top running backs in the country from Germantown. On offense, feel really good about him, for sure. But on the defensive side of the football, I think Xavier Harris, his teammate, I think is a guy that has NFL aspirations, and I think he's a guy that has that same kind of potential. State's right there in the favorites with him. I feel good about how things are trending with him, but it's going to be interesting to see what happens over the summer with him. I know Alabama's on him a little bit too, so we'll kind of watch that and develop. Jaheim Otis is going to be here for the spring game. I understand Harris is going to be here as well. Jaheim Otis is a guy a lot of people expected him to go to LSU. I don't think that's quite as clear-cut as some people would lead you to believe. I know that Ole Miss has worked hard behind the scenes there to try to get into that. I think ultimately it boils down to LSU, Ole Miss, and Mississippi State. I don't ever count out Tony Hughes for a kid, though. Tony's working hard in that deal. Tony has some connections there. Jaheim also has a big Mississippi State fan in his family that is well aware of State's, defensive line production the last several years and the amount of guys that they've put in the National Football League. And when you look at, the school up the road, when's the last time they put a defensive lineman in the league that stayed? I mean, you had Kim Deechie went in there, but didn't even get the second contract. And you got Chris Jones and Fletcher Cox and those guys out there playing for a king's ransom. So Jaheim Otis, well aware of that, work to do there. State still in the mix with him. Trevian Williams out of Crystal Springs will also be at the spring game. He is listed as a linebacker, but he is going to be a defensive lineman. Kind of depends on how he grows, and I think with his quickness, he'll be a real asset to whoever gets involved there. Auburn is probably the biggest threat there. I know some Ole Miss people have suggested that they are. I know that they believe they have a connection down there. State has some as well. But I'm told that Auburn is actually the team that State is chasing at the moment. The kid has been good. He's still in contact with Mississippi State on a regular basis, and so there's no need to rush the process with him. But I do think he is a guy that ends up on the defensive line. I don't think there's any question about that. R.J. Moss is a guy out of Biloxi. There was some Ole Miss confidence early, and I didn't know where it was coming from. That always concerns you a little bit too. You like when you don't have a good read on it, and then the Ole Miss folks are saying, "Hey, this is going to happen. This is going to happen." Well, it hadn't happened, and everything that I have heard from people that I've known for years down there tell me Mississippi State's in a great spot, and that State is out recruiting everybody for that kid. Currently rated a 4-star by 247 Sports. He'll also be at the spring game. I don't know a time frame for a decision for him, but I do believe that an early decision favors Mississippi State. Now, he is a Louisiana native, so should LSU get involved, that could be a problem. He played at Belle Chase High School for a couple of years before making a move to Biloxi. And as soon as he got to Biloxi, I started hearing from some of the guys on staff at Biloxi saying, "Hey, we got a transfer up here that's legit." And then they tell me he has been the hardest worker this offseason. And that's really encouraging to hear. When you have a guy that is your best player that is kind of setting the pace in the offseason conditioning stuff and kind of preparing for spring football, I don't like those guys that get senioritis because I think those guys, that lingers over into their college career. I like to see a guy that sprints through the finish line as a high school player. No matter how the season turns out, I think when their attitude and effort is really good as seniors, I think those guys have the potential to play earlier in their careers. I don't want those people that feel like they've already made it. And then that happens a lot too. You get a lot of guys, well, I've already got my scholarship, I know where I'm going, and so they kind of mail it in during their senior year. I think every senior should try to go out there and have their best season of their career and not feel like, well, I've already done everything I needed to do. I'm going to the SEC. No, you can get dropped too. And that happened last year for a couple of guys that Mississippi State was recruiting. And so it's important, I think, to hear things like R.J. Moss is really working hard and doing a great job kind of moving forward. And I really like the linebackers in Mississippi, not a ton of them, but I think State's got a good chance to get both of the big bona fide guys. You know, Khalid Moore already committed to Mississippi State, and then Stone Blanton, a guy that grew up a Bulldog fan. I think he's going to continue to enjoy the process, but I think ultimately he will be a Bulldog. And I've been told that, one of the things that Zach Arnett and others have told him is that, you know what, Stone, we need you to go ahead and get in the class and help us recruit because you're a guy that has some currency with the rest of the class around the state. You've got credibility within the state. We need you to kind of help lead this. And he wants to be the leader of our defense, and that's kind of how he's being recruited, is to come in here and kind of be that next guy, be that captain, be that next Errol Thompson type guy that makes all the checks and the calls and gets everybody lined up right. He's certainly capable of doing that. I understand Stone, too, had dislocated a shoulder diving back in the first or something like that, or making a diving catch in baseball, and so his baseball season's over, and so you certainly hate that. Defensive back-wise, I like the fact that you got Jontarius Elam already committed, and Trent Singleton appears to be a Bulldog lean. I think that'll happen next month. And then outside of that, you can piecemeal this thing together. But I think the great thing is as great as the defensive class is in the state of Mississippi, Mississippi State is in the favorites or the leader for most of those guys. And that's really, really exciting. I don't think State has much of a chance on the offensive side with Branson Robinson. But when you look at these difference makers on the defensive side, I would say you've got the longest to go with Otis right now. And that's a guy whose recruitment will come into focus a little bit later. He's a guy that's got some work to do. But I think when you begin to think about Harris, you think about R.J. Moss, and of course State's right there in the middle of it with Trevian Williams. State is going to be able to fill most of their needs on the defensive side of the football right here in the state of Mississippi. And those kids typically don't transfer, right? Those guys, there's a lot of pride for them to represent the home state. And I think once this ball really gets rolling here, and maybe it happens after the spring game, I'm not exactly sure. But once we start seeing the dominoes fall in State, I believe they're going to fall maroon and white. If you hadn't done so, let me encourage you to go to alphadogsthebook.com, and you can get personalized copies of Flim Flam, Stark Villains, and Alpha Dogs. And if you're looking for Stark Villains gear, you should. You got to be repping the Stark Villain shirts on Sundays at Dirty Noble Field. And you can go to starkvillains.com, and you can get those black and white shirts. You can get maroon and white. There's a lot of options to choose from. Go check them out today, starkvillains.com. I'll be back on Friday to recap the Thursday night game against Kentucky and preview what is to come Friday and Saturday. And hopefully we'll have some more recruiting news. Some things I'm kind of waiting to hear back on, or some things I'm excited about. Just not quite ready to make the call on it just yet. But until next time, let's all live our lives in a way we'll make more friends than enemies, and people can see a difference in the way we live.
Johnsonville sausage strips are strips of sausage that look and cook like bacon. They come in amazing flavors like original, maple, or chorizo. Now you can transform your BLT into an SLT or turn your bacon cheeseburger into a chorizo cheeseburger. It's not bacon. It's Johnsonville sausage strips, and it's a meaty miracle. Find it by the bacon, even though it's sausage.